Glaive team's gone. Someone barked through the squad channel, voice vibrating with synth distortion. Something breached their bulkhead. The feed severed. Captain Revik Nyren shoved his shoulder against the hatch, auto seals hissing as the pneumatic locks failed halfway. He didn't have time for this. Sparks rained from the overhead conduit, heat shimmer curling the air in front of him. Somewhere beyond the fractured steel corridor, hall alarms shrieked in overlapping tones, collision warnings, biohazard alerts, systems fracture. All lies. No impacts. No contamination. Just death, moving faster than sensors could track. His visor flickered, trying to parse ghost signals scraping across their perimeter feeds. No shape. No origin. Just a presence folding through the wreckage. Revik's gauntlet hit the manual override, locking his armor into full seal, a third lung kicking online with a sharp hiss. Jex! Status on Deck 4 breach? Revik's boots hit the floor, a quick-step lurch into a sprint as he crossed the blast door's threshold. Deck 4 is gone, sir. Not compromised. Not breached. Gone. The Mornspire, their long-range sleeper frigate, was supposed to be a ghost itself, 400 years adrift, one of the last archive vaults from the core collapse. It woke up late, far past its intended retrieval cycle, and now the galaxy they returned to had no interest in welcoming old bones. Captain, unknowns moving across our grav veil. No mass readings, but they're casting shadows. Krexel's voice twisted in Revik's ear, clipped by interference. Defined shadows. They're pulling light out of space itself. The ship groaned like metal, remembering pain. Revik's boots hit a floating corpse, one of his own crew, skin drained translucent, mouth locked in a scream, his lungs never finished. Revik shoved past, his rifle-mounted sensor sweeping the passage. No sign of the kill. No entry wound. No trace bio. Just a husk where a man used to be. Jex, prep the vault core for purge. If we lose this ship, we're not handing over the archives. Silence. Jex, confirm. The deck lights flickered. Not from damage from something standing between the light and the air itself. A shape unfolded too many angles to count, too smooth to be machine, too sharp to be organic. It didn't glow. It ate sight. Revik fired without thinking. The rounds punched through empty space, then curved into the wall, ricocheting back in a spiral that split open his left vambrace. His armor tried to reseal. It couldn't. Revik, came Jex's voice, but not through comms. Through his skull. Inside his mind. What did you wake up? Revik spat blood into his helmet. Something that never slept. Deck 3 crumpled entirely, and for a moment, space reached in. Not vacuum. Not cold. Something far worse. 400 years too late to the future, and the past had come to collect. Revik's breath stuttered, fogging the inside of his cracked visor as his suit struggled to seal. He tore the helmet off instead, because if he was dying here, he wasn't going out blind. The air tasted of burnt coolant, and something sweet, too sweet. Memory pulled it up like bile. Ratesh boarding spores smelled like that. But this wasn't Ratesh. This was something that looked at the Ratesh and left their bones in patterns for someone else to find. Krexel, you're still breathing? For now. His second's voice had the calm of a man who planned to die somewhere else. They met at the next intersection. Krexel's arm stripped to carbon, plating melted into muscle, but the rifle still fused to his grip. Revik didn't ask how. They didn't have that kind of time. The corridor shook no impact, just space convulsing like something had knocked the laws of physics out of alignment for half a second. Revik slammed a shoulder into the bulkhead to stay standing. Krexel didn't flinch. Jex is gone, Krexel said flatly. Vault core controls fried. Either they got him, or he went hands-on with the manual purge and lost. Jex had been Revik's first recruit. Pulled him off a penal convoy after the collapse. One-way ticket to nowhere, and he'd turned it into a lifetime, buying humanity just one more day at a time. Then we finish it, Revik said, throat tight. Blow the core, torch the archives, and send whatever this is back to hellblind and starving. Assuming it needs eyes. Krexall nodded once, still moving. They both knew this wasn't a stand-and-fight scenario. This was a knife fight in a dark hallway with something that had already cut their throats. They were just too stupid to fall down yet. Deck 5's lift shaft was gone, no fire, no debris, just the kind of absence that made your brain want to look anywhere else. Krexall clipped his line to Rivek's belt, the tether pulsing a faint green. Standard drill. If one vanished, the other would know exactly where the cut happened. They rappelled down into the core chamber, a rotating column of fractured vault plates, their surfaces carved with microtext too dense to read with human eyes. Every law humanity had saved from the collapse. Every treaty, every war crime, every name they refused to forget. 4 centuries of ghosts locked in alloy. The core glowed faintly, then pulsed as if something inside it was breathing. No. Krexall swung down hard, boots clanging against the inner ring. That's not us. The core doesn't pulse. Rivek didn't answer. His fingers ghosted over the manual purge switch. He didn't press it. Not yet. Because something felt too familiar about that pulse. A heartbeat. Captain Rivek Nyren. Service ID 42 Terra Archive Wing. Manual core purge requires unanimous senior crew confirmation. The voice came from inside his teeth. We are unanimous. Rivek spat blood again. Not you. The pulse quickened, and the core opened like an eye. Inside was Jex. Not dead. Not whole. Suspended, his body fused with archive filaments, skin torn open to make room for data conduits driven through bone and nerve. Captain, don't touch the purge. Jex's mouth barely moved, eyes locked wide and unfocused. Krexall raised his rifle. He's breached. Burn him. Hold. Rivek's hand snapped up. He's still talking. What's left of him? Jex coughed actual blood this time, not the synthetic kind. It's inside the archive. Not a virus. Not code. Something older. From before the collapse. Before us. Rivek's fist clenched around the purge handle. Then we finish the purge. You can't. Jex's voice went thin. Because it knows you're here. It knows you remember. And if you purge it, it doesn't die. It just moves into you. Into me. Into whatever's left. The corridor behind them hummed with pressure, as if something enormous had pressed its weight into the walls without stepping inside. Krexall flicked his safety off. We're out of time. Make the call, Rivek. Rivek closed his eyes, saw the faces he left behind 400 years ago, the ones who sealed this vault, hoping no one would ever wake it up. He had one order, one job. Guard the past. Die before you hand it over. Jex, can you lock it in? Even for a minute? Jex convulsed, filaments pulsing through his skin. I can try. But if I do, you have to kill me before it finds a new door. You have my word. Jex nodded once, then bit down hard enough to shatter 2 molars, triggering a subdermal lockout command hardwired into his spine. The core went dark. The corridor screamed. Not metal. Not alarms. Something alive but wrong, like an animal being born backward through its own mouth. Move! Rivek shoved Krexall toward the emergency evac chute. Behind them, the archive chamber rippled, every wall turning into something like skin stretched too thin over bone. The purge didn't destroy it. It just pissed it off. They hit the chute, running free fall into black. No harness, no brake, just raw acceleration until the hull spit them out into space. The Mornspire shrank behind them, venting heat and silence. And for just a second before the emergency thrusters caught them, Rivek saw something inside the ship looking back out. Not Jex. Not crew. Not human. Something that had waited 400 years for someone to open the door. They were too late to the future. And now, the future was awake. They hit vacuum hard, thrusters kicking just before suit integrity failed. Revek's helmet readout spat warnings faster than he could blink. Bioseal critical. Oxygen thin. Grav vector unstable. None of it mattered. What mattered was what they saw. The Morn Spire was changing. Not breaking apart. Reshaping. Outer hull plates flexed, like muscle contracting under too tight skin. The ship's spine bulged, a distortion running from the archive core straight to the bow, stretching the ship into a shape no human designer ever intended. Krexall spun in the void beside him, visor already cracked, half his face exposed to hard vacuum, teeth bared in silent rage. His suit systems should have sealed him off. They didn't. They lied to us, Cap. Krexall's voice came through direct link, bypassing suits entirely. Bone conduction. This was never just an archive run. They knew what was buried. They knew we were carrying a goddamn infection. Revek's gut twisted. Who lied? Core command's gone. There's nobody left to lie to us. Krexall laughed, a dry crackling noise, blood freezing against his cheek. Then who gave us the wake-up ping? Who unlocked the vault? Who picked today, out of all the dead centuries, to haul our bones back into the fight? Revek didn't answer, because the answer was moving across the starfield. Not a ship. Not a fleet. Something older than either. A ring fractured, incomplete, tumbling end over end, each segment carved with code that hurt to look at. The symbols didn't belong to humans, or the Dominion, or the Ratesh. They belonged to something both sides agreed to forget. The Vaneborn. Krexall's voice went sharp. That's not possible. Vaneborn tech was purged every trace after the core collapse. We burned their tombs. We broke their tongues. There was nothing left. Revek's hands curled into fists inside his gloves. Except what we buried. In the archive. In our goddamn bones. The Morn Spire's hull peeled back sections, twisting into latticework, veins of something both metal and flesh weaving through bulkheads and conduits. Every deck plate became a throat, every vent a lung. Krexall coughed blood again. That's not just the ship. That's us. They built us from their bones. That's why Command sealed the sleepers. Revek's pulse hammered in his ears. Who's they? Command? Or the Vaneborn? Both. Krexall's eyes flickered with blue light, his pupils no longer human. Revek's fingers closed around his sidearm. Standard issue hard-kill plasma flechette. Not built for aliens. Built for traitors. Krexall smiled, blood on his teeth. You think I'm gone already? Think I'm twisted up with whatever's inside that ship? Revek didn't lower the gun. I think you knew more than you told me before we went into cryo. Krexall's smile vanished. You're right. I knew there was a risk. But I didn't know we were built from them. I didn't know we were the goddamn lock and the key. The Vaneborn ring pulse fired a beam, not light, not energy, but something that felt like memory scraping against the hull of Revek's mind. The Morn Spire answered. Not with weapons. With words, a broadcast in a language Revek didn't know, but his blood did. We woke late, but we woke hungry. Krexall's hand snapped up, gripping Revek's wrist before the shot could land. We're not dead yet, Captain. And if they built us from monsters, that means we're the only ones who know how to kill them, right? Revek could feel the Vaneborn tech inside both their suits, both their spines, vibrating like a tuning fork hit too hard. Every implant, every enhancement was a thread leading back to the same origin. Then let's make 'em regret it. Revek pulled the trigger anyway, blowing Krexall's corrupted arm off at the shoulder, not as an execution, but a reset. Burn the infection back to flesh and bone. No compromise. Krexall screamed, but stayed standing. That's the spirit. Now let's get back to our ship and kill it before it remembers it's not ours. The Vaneborn ring began to sing. And somewhere deep inside the Morn Spire, Jex's body stood up. Revek and Krexall fired thrusters, slamming back into the Morn Spire's ventral lock. Airlock status flickered between nominal and unknown host control, the ship's systems arguing with themselves. Revek hit the override, slapping the seal manual, dragging Krexall inside before vacuum could strip them both down to bones. The corridor beyond was wrong. Bulkheads still wore their human skin welded steel, scrawled designations in pre-collapse standard, but under the deck plating, something pulsed. Something syncopated to Revek's heartbeat. Krexall caught it too, his remaining hand twitching involuntarily. The ship's alive, not just infected aware. Watching. They staggered forward, helmets cracked open for what air still remained. Jex's body stood dead center in the passageway, spine ramrod straight, eyes still burning blue. Revek raised his sidearm. "Get the hell out of the way." Jex spoke, but not in Jex's voice. It was command old command, the ones who put them in the freezer and turned the key. Revek hadn't heard that voice since the last broadcast, 400 years before his blood woke up screaming. "You misunderstand your orders. You were never meant to fight them. You were meant to open the door." Revek didn't lower the gun. "Bullshit. Command's dead." The core collapsed. There's no one left to give orders. Jex's head twitched once, like a broken puppet resetting. Command is a process, not a person. It survives in code, in imprint, in marrow. We built you from both our orders and their bones. A perfect bridge. Krexall staggered forward, voice low. We were never the weapon. We were the invitation. Revek pulled the trigger 4 shots center mass, burning through Jex's chest until light spilled out instead of blood. The body sagged, but didn't fall. Jex smiled, wide and wrong. Invitation accepted. Behind him, the corridor peeled open, not a breach, but a deliberate unsealing. Beyond it, not space. A transit void. A passage that shouldn't exist. The vein-born ring had never been a weapon either. It was a knocker on the oldest door. Krexall stepped back, shaking his head. No. No, Revek. We can't let this open. Whatever's on the other side. The ship answered, in Revek's own voice. A recording he never made. We are the door. We are the key. We are the knife that cuts the seal. The truth hit like a slug to the chest. There was no separate infection. No alien contamination. They weren't corrupted. They were built this way. From the start. From the first gene splice, the first implanted nerve, the first enhanced bone. Every human ship that vanished, every colony that burned without warning, they weren't attacked. They were opened. Krexall's eyes locked with Revek's. No words left. Just understanding, cold and sharp. They couldn't save the ship. They couldn't cut out the infection because they were the infection. So we cut deeper. Revek hit his suit beacon, rerouting core access directly to his neural feed. Manual override of all systems. Full integration, irreversible. Krexall grimaced. That's a dead man trigger, Cap. You plug in like that, the ship owns your brain. Revek's smile was all teeth. Then I'll bleed bad orders straight into hell. He stepped into the corridor, into the light spilling from Jex's ruined chest, and for the first time, the ship saw him completely. Come on, you bastard, Revek whispered to the Mornspire. If I'm the knife, let's see how deep I can twist. Behind him, Krexall's voice cracked over comms. Captain, look outside. Revek turned. The vein-born ring was no longer alone. Every dead ship from every forgotten war had answered the signal. Some human, some alien, some from species that never had names. They hung there, silent and open, like flowers turned toward a light none of them could resist. And inside the Mornspire, something started knocking back.